Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Shivangi Jain, and I will be starting off the presentation on behalf of Group 6. Our idea is for women, by women, a STEM bootcamp. And essentially, we're pitching an ecosystem to help more Indian women get into STEM. So in our first class, when Ben, me, Flo, Teresa, and Anna came together as a group from different nationalities in different countries, even though we were bonded by a mission to do something in the education space, we all had different areas that we also wanted to incorporate, be it women's rights, addressing inequality between gender pay and gender rights in developing nations or otherwise. Hence, we brainstormed to come up with an idea that addressed majority of our concerns. We noticed that a difference in access to education between the two genders correlates and leads to further increasing inequalities down the line. So according to UNICEF, currently you have 129 million girls who are out of school worldwide, and only 49% of countries have achieved gender parity in primary education. This only gets worse for developing nations. For example, in India, for every 82 literate boys, there are only 65 girls who can read and write. And as education is a strong driver for social mobility, we want to ensure inclusive and equitable quality education and promote lifelong learning opportunities for all. So our Primus focus SDGs would be quality education, gender equality, and reduced inequalities. Hence, we are now aiming to provide more Indian women better access to education, especially in fields which result in higher paying jobs like STEM. Why STEM, you ask? So firstly, it's an extremely lucrative profession that estimates the creation of 60 to 65 million jobs by 2025. And a typical STEM worker earns 2/3 more than others in other fields. And so you would imagine a country like India, which is the land of engineers and IT specialists, to have a lot of women enrolled in STEM degrees and jobs. However, there is underrepresentation even here, and there's a gap of over 14% between men and women in the STEM field area. Hence, we are now trying to close the STEM gap. We've identified a few target areas for improving the gender ratio. Number one, to give girls and women the skills and confidence to succeed in math and science. Currently, we're looking at a lot of math anxiety with young girls, and we're even seeing that they're not incentivized to enter the program because they don't have a lot of female role models that they can see in STEM. Secondly, we want to improve STEM education and early education up to grade 12. And then we want to get them into universities which teach STEM, and then also get them to job opportunities which are in the STEM areas. Ultimately, we want to empower women to be in high growth, high paying fields of the future. And so a solution for this would be, Ben, if you would change the slide. Yes, to create an ecosystem around the deferred tuition-free coding bootcamp. So what is this ecosystem? It rests on 4 pillars. Firstly, workshops in schools by women in STEM areas in blue chip companies like Facebook, Microsoft, Apple, to help women with, to show women role models in that area. Secondly, coding trainings and exams in high school, so as to give young girls the access to learn coding languages for free. Thirdly, the coding bootcamp. This is the deferred tuition-free coding bootcamp, which would be an alternate to your general prepaid university. Here, you would be paying after you get placed, which gets me to our 4th pillar, which is tie up with reputed IT firms, which would guarantee them high-paying jobs. And then on the basis of that, in installments, they could pay back the money. So ultimately, we're trying to create a community of women supporting women, and we want to balance social practice with future for sustainability. So in the next slide, you will see a video which would probably explain the concept in a little bit more detail.
We can't hear anything, at least I can't. Shivangi, you need to, yeah. Maybe? Okay.
Right, so now that you have got a first impression, I hope, from the video of how our business is operating, I will walk you through a bit more detailed timeline of our activities. So our business starts targeting female high school students in class 11, where we get girls interested in STEM by bringing in successful women that already have careers in STEM, and we facilitate an interaction between them. In class 12, we then provide to those that are interested in taking part in our bootcamps free coding or language classes. And this phase ends with high quality entrance exams for the boot camps. So therefore, this basically functions as an eligibility criterion, which allows us to select the best participants. And it's also very important for our partnering companies, since they will later recruit our graduates. The young women then enter the bootcamp level, which basically functions as an alternative to conventional college. So this is designed as a 2-year intensive bootcamp that educates the girls in coding and programming. And what is important is that these are built on the premise of a deferred tuition fee. So that means that the bootcamp fees are being sponsored upfront and will be paid back only later by the women once they start their jobs in these companies. After graduating from our bootcamps, the women then start their careers at our STEM partner companies, and they will receive assistance in the process from us. And then in the long term, the graduated women form an integral part of the ecosystem that we try to establish, because they will act as mentors for the students in the workshops. And they will obviously also simultaneously benefit from a network of women in STEM. As for our geographical scaling strategy, our overall emphasis is to focus on market penetration instead of market expansion. So therefore, we would start out by setting up our bootcamp ecosystem in Delhi only, where we partner with, in the beginning, 5 schools and companies such as SAP or Microsoft that operate in Delhi as well. In the next step, we would then replicate the setup in the national capital region, so the area around Delhi. And then we could also expand to other metros such as Mumbai, for example. Once all of these steps are implemented, we could then explore the possibility of franchises for a pan-India expansion of our bootcamps.
So you might ask, how is it making any difference to pay the fee only in the end, after the girls already graduated and started in their job? To understand this, it is crucial to understand this factor in our business model. We first have to understand some principles of a poor and community-driven country like India. So starting at the top right, we have a society which puts community over individuality, which basically means if my family says something to me, I won't go against them. We secondly have a highly gender segregated society where women are still taking care of the households and caring for the children, and men are being the ones earning the money. Also, we have a society with limited income and high poverty. So it's often not even guaranteed that families are able to pay for the education of their children. And if so, secondary education often is not feasible. So looking at the fourth path, this explains why boys are preferred to educate over girls. Because since we have this still gender segregated society and women are normally forced to stay at home and care for the children. With our approach, we are able to give women the independence to pay by themselves for the education and get educated in this community-driven society. Now, looking at our values, we ask ourselves, why would our entities partner with for women by women? On the first, we have the companies. Here we found studies that prove that the diversity among employees fosters innovation inside the company, which consequently can be a competitive advantage for the company. Also, as we already heard from Shivangi, we have a lack of highly skilled IT employees across all India. And by partnering with us, companies are able to facilitate their recruiting process and receive with comparatively low effort the employees they need. For the schools, our main value creation is that we bring role models to the schools, which are already employed in the STEM field and may motivate young females and show them what is possible to achieve in our modern society. We also or schools also show by partnering with us a commitment to advance, expand, and modernize their curriculum, which in turn may result as a differentiator for parents when they select the schools for their children. And we somehow try to address the families as well. Firstly, by also providing the role models, and we try to indirectly change the mindset in the whole families, that they see, okay, not only boys are able to pursue a career in STEM, but also the girls can do this. And of course, families get financially independent since their girls are able to pay their education by themselves. These are the short-term values, and our long-term value is to slowly shift the whole mindset in the whole society of India. So looking here at the right side of the slide, 4 steps are involved to overcome the principles I presented earlier. So we have the creation of the ecosystem where women are empowered to pay for their own education. Then we want parents to realize that girls are adding value via their own self-worth and their earning potential, and they don't need the dowry anymore to be married. In the long term, we want women to be seen as capable of being in high-paying positions and want to influence other parents, maybe relatives or neighbors who come across the girls who go into STEM, and that they also want to educate their daughters or get their daughters educated. So the ultimate goal in the long term of our ecosystem would be to shift the mindset regarding the role of the woman in society. And of course, this presents a really eager goal, but we think with our scaling strategy that Teresa just explained across whole India, we think that for woman by woman can definitely contribute to this shift.
Now to the legal setup of our organization. We plan to be a non-for-profit under Article 8 of the Indian Company Act. For us, the advantages are that there's no minimum capital requirement. So after setting up our organization, we could engage in talks with the schools and the possible companies for partnering before sourcing the capital needed for our deferred payment boot camps. On the other hand, we would also get tax exemptions as a non-for-profit. And most importantly, we would be trustworthy for the girls, the schools, the families, as well as the individuals involved in our ecosystem, as we would not stand to profit financially from our endeavor, but only focus on the social impact. On the other hand, companies could prefer for us to be profit maximizing, as for example, with the selection of the applicants, we could focus on doing the most good. For example, applicants who would not be able to attend university otherwise could be preferred to applicants whose families would be able to send them to university, and companies would focus rather on the best applicants possible rather than doing the most good. Financially, it has to be said that as an NGO, we are forced to apply for permission by the National Bank to be financed from international sources under the FCRA. So if we would not get this permission to be financed by foreign companies or foreign investors, we would only be able to be financed from India directly. So that would be a little bit of a hampering. Onto our impact assessment. Here we have listed some selected objectives and the stakeholders most interested in these objectives, as well as the measures to evaluate whether we met the criteria. For example, the proportion of women in coding jobs, especially in our partnering companies. It could be as simple as a quantitative analysis of the workforce of our partnering companies, maybe before we started bootcamps and maybe 10 years later, whether the diversity has changed, whether there are more women working there, and maybe we have an even indirect effect that because of women from our bootcamps working in these companies, more women are attracted to work in coding jobs in these companies. Other possible objectives are desirability of working in STEM amongst high school girls, the proclivity of parents to fund their daughters' higher education, as well as women seen as financial contributors to the economy, which goes back to the main point Flo made, that in India, women are not seen as financial contributors to the economy. And if we could change that, at least in the proximity of our alumni, that would do a lot. Now I will hand over to Anna.
Thank you. So there are certainly some risks associated with the functioning of our organization, which include difficulties in getting girls to participate, breaking their cultural patterns and not only the cultural ones. The second one would be girls taking part in the free workshops and in the boot camps, but without continuing their career in STEM. The third is the possible pressure from parents or schools to fund the same kind of services for boys. And the fourth are possible troubles with finding partners willing to sponsor the workshops. And the last we identified is the possible failure to complete the program due to lack of appropriate skills or predisposition for the participants. And we came up with the risk mitigation strategy for those. So as to mention, for example, the second one would mitigate the risks through further motivation and empowerment through the contact with other females intending to work in STEM, so our whole ecosystem idea, as well as through the assistance with securing a job offer with a company after graduating from the bootcamp. And to sum our whole idea up, we came up with this theory of change chart, which includes all of our inputs, such as schools, for example, all the activities we want to conduct, the outputs, which are, for example, the qualified women pursuing higher education and career in STEM, and the outcomes, especially the creation of the whole ecosystem to empower women. And our impact ideally would be overcoming gender stereotypes, leveling the STEM gap, and the change of mindset towards the role of women in society. So that is our idea. Thank you for your attention, and any questions are welcome.